Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. Thank you guys for checking out the first two segments. Before I jump on to the third segment, I remind you guys, go ahead and check out Full Sail University. If you go ahead and go to www.fullsail.edu/MLG, you can find out their information on their various educational programs. They offer programs in game design, audio engineering, video production, all these essentials to get that career in the game design or esports industry. If you're all interested in these options, check it out, www.fullsail.edu/MLG. Our next match is going to be a match between Capoch and XY. And this one is going to be talking about the one-base Blink Stalker PvT build. And first we're going to talk about how to properly execute a one-base Blink Stalker build. And then we're going to talk about how to defend that one-base Blink Stalker attack, and also how to play from behind in the Protoss vs Terran matchup. So we're going to start this replay off around a 6-minute mark. And we're going to notice that from Capoch's build, he's going to hide some of the buildings here. It's just a cool little idea in case your opponent scans you. Best likely to see what they want to see. Of course, the key thing from XY's point of view is that he actually had this SCV scout sneaking out. And this guy, what's really important is he's going to notice there's no expansion. And that's super key. So keep that in mind as we look at this replay. He already knows that it's a one-base build. And the fact that he sees 3 Stalkers poking his base, that's going to tell him it is that Blink Stalker build. So now, whenever you're executing any one-base attack, the most important thing is the timing. One base against, of course, your opponent who presumably is having more than one bases in this situation at least, and this applies to situations like that. If the longer you wait, the worse it is, because they have more economy, they're going to outproduce you in the long run. In the short run, you have a few more units. That's why the timing is so important. With the Blink Stalker attack, you want to be attacking the instant your Blink finishes. So even this chipping way before Blink is really nice, but the most important thing is be able to attack with your full power the instant Blink finishes. Now, unfortunately, what that means is you need to have a proxy pylon up where you're warping in your additional reinforcement Stalkers. And unfortunately for Capoch, he doesn't have that. And he has these 2 Stalkers back here, which are kind of like partying. I think they're afraid of a drop. But if you're doing a one-base Blink Stalker attack, you gotta send everything on the attack. That's rule number 1. It will hit before their drop will hit if they went for the expansion. So that's why you do this build if you know they went for the expansion. And now he's having to run these guys into. He's losing time. And the reason why the timing is so important is look at the Terran build, right? Ideally, he would have his Stalkers as of 10 seconds ago when Blink finished, already blinking up to the high ground, and he could start picking off an SCV here, pick off Marines, force him to pull SCVs. Anything you do to slow down their economy is what you want to do. Because as soon as you get a couple tanks up, you're in kind of trouble. So he's going to wait around for the Observer because he noticed there was a Widow Mine on the high ground, and he doesn't want to deal with attacking this front until he has the Observer. Which is right, of course. You don't want to attack Widow Mine without being able to see it. But there are other fronts you could always pursue to try to find a different angle. Now, the most important thing when defending a Blink Stalker attack is the siege tanks. Siege tanks are your ultimate anti-Blink Stalker tool. Of course, if you have a lot of stim buy with medevacs, that works too, but you're not going to have a lot of stim buy with medevacs when the Blink Stalker attack hits. So, your most important tool is the siege tank. You want to make sure it's as difficult as possible for the Stalkers to blink on top of them. And that means 2 things. One, that means enough damage output via Marines, and maybe potentially even pulling some SCVs, that if they blink on top of those siege tanks, they're going to be punished for it, right? And 2, that means also make it difficult for them to actually blink. Stalkers take up space. You have to think, okay, this is my siege tank fort, right? If my siege tank fort is right here, Stalkers can attack that siege tank fort from somewhere around something like that, right? Pretend that's a perfect circle with range 6. It'd probably be slightly bigger than that. I might be out by a hex or 2, but the general idea is make as little space as possible in this zone, right? So think, okay, my next depot, where should that go? Well, what about right here? I can put a depot right here. What about right here? Right? Although this spot is hard to blink to, there's nothing close to it. My barracks, if I have to fly this barracks away, right? Because he's attacking from the low ground, I can't quite protect it. Where should that barracks go? Well, how about putting that guy right here, right? Or, I mean, it might have to be right here, just to fit it in right. But the idea is, the less space there is by those siege tanks, the much more difficult it is for the Stalkers to actually blink in and focus it. If 2 Stalkers are attacking your siege tank, they're going to take a long time to kill, they're probably going to die first. If 10 are, they're going to 2-shot it, right? Or actually, 12 are, they're going to 1-shot it, or something like that. And that's not what you want. So you want to try to jam up that space as good as possible. You can see he's done a pretty good job of that. right, with the factory and the bunkers and the command center, but you can always be better, right? And that's the important thing about defense. The cool thing about this build, though, is if you're defending one-base Blink Stalker attack, you can afford a couple mistakes. You can afford to not be perfect as long as your defense is good. We should still always strive for perfection, right? So keep the tanks in area where there's as little room as possible, right? Like right here, this giant open area, this is what you're worried about most of all, because there's nothing to protect this giant open area. Capoch can see that, right? His mothership core goes in here, sees it. He's going to blink on and take advantage of it. He's going to focus on these tanks. Now, of course, there's enough damage output here. It's not like Capoch wins the game from doing this, but Capoch in a situation where without that attack, he had lost the game. He literally had no chance until he was able to take out those 3 tanks. Now, without those 3 tanks, he can contain a Terran for longer. But he's still behind. He doesn't have enough Stalkers to really make sure he can kill a Terran, but he can warp in like a sentry or something, and he can be sure to have a good contain. He is behind at this point. And now it's important to understand how to play from behind in PvT. And the reason why he's behind, you can look at economy. He has half the workers. Army value, he's ahead, but he can't really break the Terran with the bunkers and SCVs there. Whenever you're playing from behind in Protoss versus Terran, it's basically the same thing. You want to go for Templar of one kind. If it's Dark Templar or High Templar, whichever one is better for the circumstances, that's exactly what you want to go for. And the reason why is because the High Templar and Dark Templar are the only Protoss units that have the potential to be insanely cost efficient, right? Blink Stalkers, if you micro insanely, they may be slightly cost efficient. You may pick off a couple of free units. Colossi, if they don't have Vikings, may be slightly cost efficient. You may get a better engagement. But if your opponent has much more units than you, which over time, given this economic discrepancy, as soon as he decides to drop all 4 mules he has here, there's going to be such an enormous army difference that the only way you're going to win the battle is either by catching them off guard when you don't have cloak and your DTs kill everything, or with some massive side storms, because one Templar can also kill a lot of units. So if you're ever in a situation as Protoss where you're behind, you need to go for either High Templar or Dark Templar. Trying to be fancy is cool with Blink Stalkers. Trying to run the container for as long as possible is cool. But with Siege Tanks, they're going to break that contain sooner or later. And if you're in a situation where you're depending on holding them off forever, that's not a good situation. Because as you can see here, as more and more tanks inch forward with SCVs to stop the Stalkers from blinking underneath them, you're not going to be able to contain them basically forever. The tanks can stop the sentries from force field the ramp. And if you get the force field off, the tanks can protect units that would be trapped. They're not trapped because tanks can protect them from the high ground. You can see there, Stalkers try to pick off the trapped units. They just get blown up by the siege tanks. So from this point on, I mean, he's trying to hold the container, and we can just see it's just not going to work. He's going to be too far behind. We'll just fast forward this by 4-8. Just get slaughtered trying to hold him back. And now as soon as he does get low ground, the economic advantage is going to kick into an insane amount here. It's going to lead to him having a lot more units. And as soon as he wants, we can just push across the map, and Capoch will have no way to stop this, right? Maybe if he had like 3 storms on army, he'd have a chance, but with what he has right now, it's not going to be enough. And that's going to be GG. So a couple of things to keep in mind in this one-base Blink Stalker build from both sides. So one thing is, if you're doing an aggressive build of any race, if you're Terran, you're rushing Hellbat drops. If you're Protoss, one-base Blink Stalker, Zerg, you're doing that like roach baiting attack on Terran. Like these are 3 examples. There's tons of aggressive builds. Aggressive builds are all about timing. The whole goal of it is you attack your opponent before they're ready. You attack your opponent before their economic advantage or the tech advantage kicks in and you fall behind in the game. And so any hesitation, missing a pylon, forgetting your proxy pylon for 10, 15 seconds, that's a big deal. In a large macro game, you're wanting to warp in to harass their third base. Your proxy pylon comes up and your warp in is delayed by 5, 10 seconds. It's not that big a deal. In an aggressive build, timing is everything. It's super, super, super important. Make sure your build is just absolutely streamlined perfectly and you're hitting the instant that you can possibly hit. And also, if you're ever behind this Protoss, make sure to go for Templar of some kind. An army like this, if you have like 1 Colossi with... Actually, let's back this up just a second here. Hit the back key once. Or twice. Right here, right? This army, if you look at the units tab or the army value tab, he could have, let's say, 2 less Stalkers, right? Or 2 less Stalkers and 1 less Zealot and 1 more Colossus, one Colossus added in. He's still not going to stop that army. There's no way. He could have Immortals, with this same army value, it's not going to stop it. Nothing will except for Templar. If you're behind this much in army value, if you're behind by less than half your opponent's army value, the only way you're going to make a comeback against Tyrannus Protoss, Dark Templar or High Templar. Either Storms being insanely cost efficient, or Dark Templar and hoping they don't have detection. Which wraps up our third segment. Take a short break and be right on to our final section, Q&A.